Good. I'm Skip Ganeem, and welcome to our Middle East Policy Forum tonight. And it's wonderful to have all of you here. This is a special program for me, both because of the subject, the topic, but also the one that I would just tell you is that for the years I was in the Foreign Service and having served in Jordan twice, both in the 1980s as Deputy Chief of Mission and then in 2001 to 4 as the ambassador, I knew Jack O'Connell personally and very well for many years. And I can tell you he was a great man and deeply involved and deeply committed, and he had strong, strong feelings. And thank heavens he put them in a book. And thanks to Vernon Loeb, who worked with him as author. And we're happy to have Jack's son, Sean, here as well to share some things. But let me just say that, again, the Middle East Policy Forum is a program that we run through the Institute for Middle East Studies here at the Elliott School to try to bring programs, 4, 5, or 6 during a semester, where we bring people or just talk about the events in the region, or in this particular case, a book which also deals with an issue of importance in the region. And we are very thankful to the generous support of ExxonMobil that gives us a grant each year to allow us to have this forum. So without further ado, as you know from the flyer and the reason why you're here, Jack O'Connell, who was station chief or CIA head in Amman, Jordan, wrote his memoirs, wrote his book about his experiences and his very close friendship with King Hussein. And he died, about a year and a half ago now, Sean?
July 12th.
July 12th, yeah. And had done it and had written his book. And he worked very closely. Vernon Loeb, who is on my far right, is Metro editor at the Washington Post and previously served as deputy managing editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer. In addition to King's Counsel, he is the co-author of All in the Education of General David Petraeus, along with Paula Broadwell. And that book, I think you know, is now on the New York Times bestseller list. Previously, he covered the U.S. intelligence community and national security issues on the national staff at the Washington Post. And during that time, he wrote extensively about the CIA, numerous issues affecting the broader intelligence community, and a series of breaking news events involving U.S. intelligence, such as the bombing of the El Shifa pharmaceutical plant in Khartoum, you may remember about, the CIA's role in the Y Peace Accord, the Kindred Spirit investigation at Los Alamos National Laboratory, and the mistaken bombing of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. So we're very pleased to have him with us tonight. And also, just to my right, close, is Jack's son, Sean O'Connell. He is a member of the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia bars. He obtained his LLM in Comparative and International Law from Georgetown in 1989, which is all right for us here at GW. Born in 1959, he moved with his father, mother, and oldest sister Kelly to Beirut, where his father was deputy chief of station that means of the CIA, in case you don't follow the vocabulary, from 1960 to 1963. In 1963, he moved with his family to Amman, Jordan, where his father, Jack, as I told you, was chief of station, a position that he held there until 1971. A very unusual, I might say, assignment in the federal government for those of you who have any experience. We rarely get to serve at a post for that number of years, but it was a tribute and a commentary, really, on Jack's very close relationship with the king. Sean lived in Amman, except for home leaves and 2 evacuations, one immediately after the 1967 Six-Day War, and the other in June during Black September conflict. So Jack has had his own experiences in the region. Sean just had mentioned to me that he had worked with his father and been involved in efforts to get the book published, and that one of his father's very last words was, "Get the book published." So without further ado, Vernon, I think we're going to have you come up first. And then we'll have question and answers afterwards.
Thanks for coming. So let me tell you a little bit about how I came to work on this book. Jack and I actually had the same agent, and I was working at the time at the Philadelphia Inquirer. I got a call one day from Scott Moyers at the Wiley Agency in New York and said, I have a manuscript written by a CIA legend, and he needs some help to, get this book across the finish line, and I wondered if you'd be interested in working with him. And he told me his name was Jack O'Connell. I kind of racked my brain to see if I'd ever, bumped into him when I was covering the CIA. I think I'd heard of him, but I never actually met him. So I drove down to Arlington one Saturday, and spent, several hours immersed in the extant manuscript at the time, and just talking to Jack. And I quickly realized that, this was a great project. And so my role was to basically take Jack's manuscript and work with him. He was, I think, 88 at the time. And he was frail, he was in a wheelchair, but he was very sharp mentally. And I probably interviewed him over the course of the next year for, probably 100 hours. We would spend 4 or 5 hours together most weekends. And I was always impressed, even at his age, how he didn't remember everything, and there were some gaps in his memory. But what he remembered, he remembered. He remembered it exactly. It was exactly the same every time he told it to me. And I was impressed by how committed he was to this book. This book grows out of a promise he made to King Hussein. King Hussein, before he died in 99, wanted to write this book and tell the truth, what he thought was the truth about Middle East peace talks and his role in them, really going all the way back to the mid-50s. And Jack had engaged, first he engaged a guy named Philip Galen, who at the time was editorial page editor of the Washington Post, and he was going to write the book. And Galen began working on it. He flew to Jordan, met with the king. The king basically said, anything I got is yours. I want the truth to come out about my dealings with Israel, about my dealings with Saddam, about my dealings with the PLO and Black September, no holes barred. Galen began working on the book. He became sick. He ultimately couldn't finish. Then the plan was, around 2000, Dick Helms, who was a good friend of Jack's, was working on his memoirs. So the idea sort of became, maybe Dick could kind of write the points that that the king wants to make into his memoirs, and Jack began working with Dick Helms. And in fact, the book has a few interesting memos in it that Dick Helms wrote to Jack during the course of this collaboration, but ultimately Dick Helms decided, this just isn't working for me. I didn't really have that much to do with these events in the Middle East that King Hussein most once dealt with in this book. And he gave up, and at that point Jack ultimately decided, well, if anybody's King Hussein had died by now, and Jack basically decided if anybody's going to write this book, it's going to be me. So he sat down one summer and produced a manuscript, and the manuscript was just chock full of little scoops. And I came in, at a point where he had this manuscript. The agent felt it needed just a little bit of a lift, a little bit of sort of filling in some gaps to take it to publication. So that was sort of my role. As I said, the book is full of, I don't know how many of you have read it, but it's a fun read, it's a fast read, and it's full of lots of little things that, haven't been known before, beginning with the book begins with Jack on his first overseas assignment for the agency is given tapes that the FBI had made here at embassies in Washington that showed that there was a coup underway within the Jordanian military, and he was sent with these tapes over to Amman to sort of unravel this coup in the mid-1950s. So that's where the book begins. And again, prior to this book, I don't think the existence of this coup attempt or the CIA's role in unwinding it had ever been known. And from there, the book tracks his career, and a great career it was. He then goes to Lebanon in the early 1960s, where he encounters Kim Philby on the street one day.